The morning sky above Kepler 442b burned orange as three suns rose over the floating gardens of New Haven Colony. Commander HFY stood on the observation deck of the main agricultural platform, watching the daily harvest begin in the vast crop fields that stretched to the horizon. The Zilani had turned this world into a paradise over 200 years of careful cultivation. Floating cities drifted between massive tree groves while automated farming systems tended to endless rows of grain and vegetables that fed 17 other worlds in this sector of the galaxy. Dr. Kira Lynn rushed onto the observation deck, her pale blue skin flushed with anxiety. The young scientist carried a data tablet that flickered with urgent readings from the colony's deep space monitoring array. She had been tracking unusual energy signatures at the edge of the system for 3 days, hoping they were just solar flares or asteroid impacts. The readings told a different story. "Commander, we have incoming ships," she said, her voice tight with fear. "Long-range sensors show 47 vessels approaching at sublight speed. They match Vorthon Empire configuration patterns from our historical databases." HFY felt his heart sink. The Vorthon Empire was known throughout this part of the galaxy as a force of destruction that left only stripped worlds and enslaved populations in its wake. Their insectoid warriors had conquered dozens of systems, and no civilization had ever successfully resisted them. The Zilani were a peaceful people who had never developed weapons beyond basic defensive systems for their transport ships. "How long until they reach orbital position?" HFY asked, already knowing the answer would be measured in hours rather than days. 16 hours at current speed. "Commander, what are we going to do? We have no military ships, no weapons capable of fighting a fleet that size. Our population centers are completely exposed." HFY looked out at the peaceful morning scene below them. Thousands of Zilani families lived in those floating cities, raising their children among the gardens they had spent generations perfecting. The colony housed over 3 million souls, including many refugees from other worlds the Vorthon had already destroyed. There was nowhere to run, and no way to fight. "Send an immediate evacuation order to all population centers," he commanded. "Have them move to the deep cavern systems on the southern continent. It won't protect them from orbital bombardment, but it might buy us time." Kira Lynn nodded and began transmitting the emergency protocols. Across the colony world, alarm signals echoed from the floating cities as families grabbed essential supplies and began the desperate journey to underground shelters that were never meant to house so many people. Meanwhile, 3 months into deep space, the exploration vessel UES Defiance cruised through the void between star systems. Captain Jack Morrison reviewed the day's reports in his ready room, while his crew conducted routine maintenance on their ship's systems. The Defiance was one of Earth's newest exploration vessels, designed for long-range reconnaissance missions in uncharted space. Morrison and his crew of 85 had been mapping star systems and searching for signs of alien life for over a year. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez sat at her communications station on the bridge, monitoring the usual background, radiation that filled space between the stars. Her equipment was designed to detect any artificial signals that might indicate intelligent life, something humanity had been searching for since they first reached the stars 50 years ago. Most days, her screens showed nothing but cosmic static and the occasional pulsar signal. Today was different. A weak transmission flickered across her displays, barely distinguishable from background noise. The signal pattern was clearly artificial, showing the organized structure that only came from intelligent sources. Rodriguez adjusted her equipment, boosting the signal strength and running it through the ship's translation computers. "Captain, Morrison to the bridge immediately," she announced over the ship's communication system. Her voice carried an urgency that brought Morrison running from his quarters. "What do you have, Lieutenant?" Morrison asked as he studied the displays showing the alien transmission. "Sir, we're receiving a distress signal from an unknown source. The signal is extremely weak, but our computers have been able to extract a basic translation." It's coming from a star system about 12 light years from our current position. Morrison read the translated message that appeared on the main screen. The words were simple, but filled with desperation. "We are dying. Our world burns. If any compassionate beings receive this message, please help us. We have children." The bridge crew fell silent as they absorbed the meaning of those words. Somewhere in the darkness of space, an entire civilization was calling out for help from anyone who might hear them. The message repeated every few minutes, growing weaker as the transmission equipment sending it was presumably being destroyed. "Sir, we're picking up additional signals from the same location," Rodriguez reported. "Energy weapon discharges consistent with orbital bombardment patterns. Someone is attacking that world." Morrison studied the tactical display showing the source location of the signals. His ship was designed for exploration, not combat, but it carried enough firepower to handle pirates or hostile wildlife on unexplored worlds. Whatever was happening in that distant star system was far beyond anything the Defiance could handle alone. Back on Kepler 442b, the Vorthon fleet had arrived in orbit and begun their standard invasion protocol. General Tarvex commanded the operation. From his flagship, a massive dreadnought bristling with plasma cannons and troop transport bays. The Vorthon were methodical in their conquests, preferring to break the spirit of their enemies through overwhelming displays of power before landing. Ground forces. The first orbital strikes hit the major population centers with devastating precision. Plasma beams lanced down from orbit, turning the floating cities into balls of fire that crashed into the forest canopy below. The carefully maintained agricultural systems that had fed multiple worlds were reduced to burning ruins in minutes. Commander HFY watched from the emergency command center deep beneath the colony's capital city as his life's work was destroyed. The Vorthon were not just conquering his world. They were erasing everything the Zalani had built. The attacking ships showed no interest in preserving the agricultural infrastructure or the beautiful cities that had taken centuries to grow. "Commander, we have to do something," Dr. Kira Lin pleaded. "Our people are dying up there. The evacuation sites are being targeted. They're hunting down every settlement." HFY made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. He ordered Kira Lin to boost the colony's communication array to maximum power, using every satellite and transmission dish they had to broadcast their distress signal across hundreds of light years. The message was simple and desperate, sent to anyone in the galaxy who might have the compassion to help. On the bridge of the UES Defiance, Captain Morrison made his own decision. "Set course for the source of that transmission, maximum speed," he ordered. "And send a priority message to Earth Fleet Command. Include all the tactical data we've gathered." As the human ship changed course toward the dying world, Morrison couldn't know that his decision would introduce humanity to a galaxy that had never seen their kind of warfare before. Admiral Lisa Parker stood in the war room deep beneath the Colorado mountains, studying the holographic display that showed Captain Morrison's urgent transmission from deep space. The message had arrived through quantum relay just 6 hours ago, and already the entire command structure of Earth's naval forces was mobilizing for humanity's first contact with hostile alien life. The data Morrison had gathered painted a clear picture of genocide in progress, and Admiral Parker knew that Earth's response would define humanity's place in whatever galactic community existed out there. Dr. Alex Kim worked frantically at his analysis station, breaking down every piece of information contained in the alien distress signals. As Earth's leading xenobiologist, he had spent years preparing for this moment, but the reality was more urgent than any simulation. The aliens calling themselves Zalani appeared to be peaceful herbivores based on their language patterns and the agricultural focus of their transmissions. Their technology was advanced in biotechnology and environmental systems, but showed no military applications whatsoever. "Admiral, I'm reading 47 attacking vessels in the target system," reported Colonel Ben Wright as he reviewed the tactical data. The aggressor species calls themselves the Vorthon Empire. Their ships are using directed energy weapons and showing standard orbital bombardment patterns. Based on energy signatures, their technology level is roughly equivalent to our own, maybe slightly ahead in energy weapon efficiency, but behind in materials science. Admiral Parker studied the fleet deployment options on her tactical display. Earth maintained 12 deep space combat vessels designed for long-range operations, each carrying enough firepower to sterilize a planet's surface. They had been built during humanity's expansion into the asteroid belt, when corporate wars and territorial disputes required ships that could fight and survive far from home. No one had expected them to face alien civilizations, but their brutal efficiency was exactly what this situation demanded. "Colonel Wright, I want your Marines loaded and ready for ground operations within 4 hours," Parker ordered. "We don't know what we'll find when we get there, but if there are survivors, they'll need immediate assistance. Dr. Kim, how long do you need to prepare translation protocols and first contact procedures?" Dr. Kim looked up from his displays, his face pale with the magnitude of what they were attempting. "Admiral, we're talking about humanity's first contact with alien civilization, and we're doing it in the middle of an active war zone. I can have basic translation software ready based on the distress signals, but we'll be making it up as we go. The good news is that the Zilani seem to use mathematical concepts similar to ours, so communication should be possible." Meanwhile, the UES Defiance raced through hyperspace toward the Kepler 442 system, pushing its engines beyond normal safety limits. Captain Morrison had ordered combat readiness throughout the ship, knowing they would arrive at a battle zone with no backup for days. His crew of 85 prepared their ship's weapons systems and defensive measures, but everyone understood they were one small vessel against an entire invasion fleet. Lieutenant Rodriguez continued monitoring alien transmissions as they grew stronger with each passing hour. The desperate pleas for help had evolved into tactical communications between resistance groups hiding in underground shelters. The Zilani were showing remarkable creativity in their defensive efforts, using their agricultural technology to create obstacles and hiding places that frustrated the Vorthon ground forces. "Captain, I'm picking up new signals from the target system," Rodriguez reported. "The Vorthon are requesting additional ships from their home base. It sounds like the invasion isn't going as smoothly as they expected. The Zilani are putting up more resistance than anticipated." Morrison felt a grim satisfaction at that news. Any delay in the Vorthon operation meant more civilians might survive until help arrived. He had read the historical reports of what happened to populations that fell under Vorthon control. The Empire was known for working conquered peoples to death in mining operations before moving on to the next target. Back on Earth, Colonel Wright supervised the loading of his Marine battalions onto the responding fleet. Each soldier carried equipment designed for the most hostile environments Earth could imagine. Their powered armor could operate in vacuum, underwater, or in corrosive atmospheres. Their weapons were built to penetrate any material known to human science, and had been tested in the brutal conditions of asteroid mining conflicts where a single mistake meant death in the vacuum of space. "Sir, the fleet reports ready for departure," reported his aide, Lieutenant Gary Thompson. "All 12 ships are loaded with full Marine complements and enough supplies for extended operations. Admiral Parker has authorized the use of kinetic bombardment weapons if the situation requires it." Wright nodded grimly as he reviewed the weapons loadout. Humanity had developed kinetic bombardment during the corporate wars of the asteroid belt, where conventional explosives were ineffective against hardened mining installations. Tungsten rods accelerated to near light speed could penetrate any known armor and deliver the explosive force of nuclear weapons without the radiation. They were weapons of absolute destruction, designed by a species that had learned warfare in the most unforgiving environment possible. Dr. Kim finished his analysis of the Vorthon communications protocols and found something disturbing. The alien Empire showed signs of technological stagnation, using the same weapons and tactics for centuries without innovation. Their military doctrine relied on overwhelming force applied through standardized procedures. They had never faced an enemy that could match their technology or adapt to their methods. "Admiral, the Vorthon fight like they've never met serious resistance," Dr. Kim reported. "Their tactics are based on intimidation and superior firepower, but they show no flexibility or creativity. They're used to enemies surrendering after the first demonstration of force." Admiral Parker smiled coldly as she reviewed the final preparations. Humanity had learned warfare during millions of years of evolution on a planet that tried to kill them every day. They had refined those lessons during centuries of conflict with each other, creating military technology and tactics designed to win against any enemy, regardless of the odds. The Vorthon Empire was about to learn why most of the galaxy considered Earth a death world where nothing should be able to survive, let alone evolve intelligence. "Fleet commanders, this is Admiral Parker," she announced over the secure communications network. "We are responding to a genocide in progress. Our mission is to protect innocent civilians from an aggressive alien empire. Rules of engagement are simple. Anyone shooting at civilians is a legitimate target. We will show them why humans are the apex predators of the galaxy." The 12 ships of Earth's first interstellar combat fleet launched from hidden bases around the solar system. Their destination, a star system where humanity would announce its presence to the galaxy, with overwhelming firepower and uncompromising moral purpose. The UES Defiance dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system and immediately went into stealth mode, using passive sensors to assess the battlefield ahead. Captain Morrison studied the tactical display with growing anger as he watched Vorthon ships systematically destroying everything the Zalani had built over centuries. Orbital bombardment had turned the beautiful floating cities into burning wreckage, while ground forces hunted down survivors who had fled to underground shelters. "Captain, I count 47 Vorthon vessels in standard siege formation around the planet," reported Lieutenant Rodriguez. "They're maintaining high orbit and firing on any structure larger than a storage shed. Long-range sensors show massive refugee movements toward the southern continent, but the Vorthan are targeting those areas too." Morrison clenched his fists as he watched an entire civilization being erased from existence. The Defiance carried enough firepower to damage several Vorthon ships, but attacking alone would be suicide and wouldn't save the civilians below. He needed to gather intelligence for the fleet that was still days away and find a way to help the survivors until reinforcements arrived. "Take us closer using the asteroid belt for cover," Morrison ordered. "I want detailed scans of their ships and weapons. If we're going to fight these things, we need to know their capabilities." The Defiance crept through the system's outer asteroid belt, using the large rocks to mask their heat signature and sensor profile. The ship's advanced reconnaissance equipment began cataloging every detail of the Vorthon fleet, from their energy, weapon specifications to their communication frequencies. What Morrison's crew discovered gave them hope for the coming battle. "Sir, these aliens fight like they've never faced real opposition," observed Lieutenant Commander Sarah White, the ship's tactical officer. "Their formation is designed for intimidation rather than defense. They're bunched up in close orbit with no overlapping fields of fire or escape routes. A coordinated attack could cause massive damage before they could respond." Morrison nodded as he studied the enemy formation. The Vorthon ships were arranged like a parade formation, clearly visible to anyone on the planet below. Their weapons were powerful, but showed limited range compared to human kinetic weapons. Most importantly, their shields appeared designed to stop energy weapons, but might be vulnerable to physical projectiles traveling at high velocity. Down on the planet's surface, Prime Elder Silthara led a group of refugees through the underground cavern systems that honeycombed the southern continent. The Zalani had used these natural formations for storage and emergency shelters, but they were never meant to house millions of displaced civilians. Food was running low, and the constant sound of orbital bombardment above sent tremors through the rock that terrified the children. "Elder, Our scouts report Vorthan ground forces have landed near the northern tunnel entrances, reported one of her advisors. They're using some kind of tracking equipment to hunt down our people. The main evacuation routes are compromised. Silthara felt the weight of responsibility for every life under her protection. The Zilani had always been a peaceful people, solving conflicts through discussion and compromise. They had no experience with the kind of total warfare the Vorthan practiced, where the goal was complete extermination rather than conquest or control. Have our engineers seal the northern tunnels, she decided. We'll use the old mining shafts to move people deeper underground. The Vorthan may have superior weapons, but they don't know these caverns like we do. High above the planet, General Tarvex grew frustrated with the slow progress of his ground forces. The Zilani were proving more resourceful than expected, using their knowledge of the planet's geography to evade his troops and stage hit-and-run attacks using improvised weapons. What should have been a simple mop-up operation was turning into a prolonged hunt through underground mazes. War Marshal, request permission to use deep penetration charges on the cavern systems, Tarvex transmitted to his superior. These herbivores are hiding like parasites in the rocks. A few thermal charges will collapse their tunnels and end this resistance. War Marshal Kethvar reviewed the situation from his command ship at the edge of the system. The Vorthan Empire had built its reputation on quick, decisive conquests that left other species too terrified to resist. This prolonged campaign was making them look weak and might encourage rebellions in other conquered territories. Permission granted, Kethvar replied. Finish this quickly. We have reports of other species watching this operation. Any sign of weakness will be seen throughout the sector. The Vorthan began preparing thermal charges designed to collapse the underground cavern systems and bury the remaining Zilani alive. The weapons would turn the planet's own geology against the survivors, creating a tomb that would end their resistance permanently. Captain Morrison watched the preparations through his ship's sensors and realized time was running out for the civilians below. His crew had gathered enough intelligence about Vorthan capabilities to help the incoming human fleet. But the refugees would be dead long before reinforcements arrived. He made a decision that violated every regulation about first contact with alien species. Open a communication channel to the planet's surface, Morrison ordered. Find someone in authority down there and tell them help is coming. Lieutenant Rodriguez worked quickly to establish contact with the Zilani resistance network. Her equipment locked onto a communication hub deep in the cavern systems and began transmitting on frequencies her analysis suggested the aliens could. Receive. Unknown alien vessel, this is Prime Elder Silthara of the Zilani colony, came the reply in heavily accented but understandable English. Are you responding to our distress signal? This is Captain Morrison of the Earth vessel Defiance, Morrison replied. We received your call for help and assistance is on the way. Large human fleet arriving in 48 hours. Can you hold out that long? The communication channel fell silent for several seconds before Silthara responded, her voice filled with hope and desperation. Captain Morrison, we have 3 million civilians in underground shelters. The Vorthan are preparing to collapse our hiding places with thermal charges. We need immediate assistance. Morrison looked at his tactical display showing the overwhelming Vorthan fleet positioned between his single ship and the planet below. Every military protocol said he should wait for reinforcements and avoid contact with superior enemy forces. But 3 million innocent lives hung in the balance, and sometimes doing the right thing meant ignoring the rules. Prime Elder, this is going to sound crazy, but I need you to trust me, Morrison said. In 30 minutes, I want every Zilani with communication equipment to start broadcasting on all frequencies. Make as much electronic noise as possible. When I give the signal, everyone needs to get as deep underground as they can and stay there for exactly 1 hour. Morrison turned to his crew with a grim smile. 1 ship against 47 was impossible odds by any reasonable calculation, but Captain Morrison had not spent years fighting in the asteroid belt by being reasonable. Captain Morrison watched the countdown timer reach 0 and gave the order that would announce humanity's presence to the galaxy. The UES Defiance burst from the asteroid belt at maximum acceleration, targeting the largest Vorthan ship with a full spread of kinetic missiles. The tungsten projectiles streaked across space at incredible velocity, their simple mass and speed making them nearly impossible to intercept or deflect. General Tarvex was reviewing the thermal charge placement when his flagship shuddered under. Multiple impacts that punched through the ship's energy shields like they were made of paper. Emergency alarms wailed throughout the Vorthan fleet as ships that had never been seriously damaged in centuries of conquest suddenly found their hulls, breached by weapons they had never encountered before. "Unknown vessel attacking the fleet," reported the Vorthan sensor operator, his voice filled with confusion. "Single ship, small configuration, using projectile weapons of unknown design. Shields are ineffective against their attack." Tarvex stared at his tactical display in disbelief. The attacking ship was tiny compared to his dreadnoughts, barely larger than a Vorthan courier vessel, yet it had just crippled 3 of his warships with a single volley. The energy readings from the enemy weapons made no sense according to everything the Vorthan knew about space combat. The Defiance rolled and twisted through space like a fighter craft, using maneuvers that would have killed any crew not trained in the high-gravity environments of Earth's asteroid belt. Morrison's helmsman threw the ship into a spiral pattern that confused Vorthan targeting computers while the weapons crew loaded their next volley of kinetic projectiles. "Target their formation center," Morrison ordered. "Make them think we're trying to break through to the planet. I want their attention focused on us, not on the civilians below." Lieutenant Commander White programmed the missile guidance systems to target the densest concentration of Vorthan ships. The human weapons were designed for asteroid mining operations, where precision and penetrating power were more important than explosive yield. Against enemy vessels designed to fight energy weapons, the kinetic projectiles were devastatingly effective. The Vorthan fleet began to respond with their standard combat formation, turning their ships to present their strongest shields toward the attacking vessel while charging their plasma cannons for return fire. Their tactics had worked against every enemy they had ever faced, relying on superior firepower and defensive technology to overwhelm opposition. Morrison smiled grimly as he watched the alien fleet arrange itself exactly as his tactical officer had predicted. The Vorthan were fighting by the book, using procedures that had served them well against other galactic civilizations, but were completely unsuited for fighting humans who had learned warfare in the most hostile environment imaginable. "All ships concentrate fire on the lead vessel," General Tarvex commanded. "Destroy this pest so we can return to completing our mission." 46 Vorthan warships opened fire simultaneously, filling space with plasma beams that could vaporize asteroids and melt planetary surfaces. The coordinated barrage was enough firepower to destroy a small moon, directed at a single human exploration vessel that had no business surviving such an attack. The Defiance disappeared in a ball of superheated plasma that lit up the entire star system. Tarvex allowed himself a moment of satisfaction as his sensors confirmed the destruction of the annoying little ship that had dared to attack the mighty Vorthan Empire. The brief interruption was over, and they could return to eliminating the Zalani resistance. "Sir, new contacts dropping out of hyperspace at the system edge," reported the Vorthan sensor operator, his voice now tinged with alarm. 12 vessels, larger configuration, moving at high speed toward our position." Tarvex felt his confidence begin to waver as he studied the sensor readings. The new ships were broadcasting the same energy signatures as the vessel they had just destroyed, but these were much larger and showed weapon configurations that made his tactical computers issue warning alerts. Whoever these aliens were, they had sent their main fleet in response to his attack on their scout ship. Admiral Parker's task force had arrived at the worst possible moment from the Vorthan perspective, and the best possible moment for the civilians. Hiding below, the 12 human warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their weapons already charged and targeting solutions calculated during their approach through the outer system. "Admiral, the Defiance is gone," reported Captain Nina Torres from her flagship, the heavy cruiser UES Vengeance. Long-range sensors showed debris scattered across a wide area. Captain Morrison and his crew bought us time with their lives. Parker studied the tactical situation with cold fury. The Vorthan fleet was bunched together in low orbit, exactly where Morrison had maneuvered them. Their ships were designed for intimidation and overwhelming firepower against inferior opponents, not for fighting a coordinated attack by vessels carrying the concentrated destructive power of human military technology. All ships weapons free, Parker commanded. These aliens just killed 85 human beings who were trying to protect innocent civilians. Show them what that mistake costs. The human fleet opened fire with weapons designed during centuries of warfare in the asteroid belt, where combat took place at extreme ranges with no atmosphere to slow projectiles or dissipate energy beams. Kinetic bombardment weapons launched tungsten rods accelerated to significant fractions of light speed, while directed energy weapons focused the power of small fusion reactors into coherent beams that could cut through planetary crust. War Marshal Kethvar watched in horror from his command position as his invasion fleet was systematically destroyed by aliens whose very existence contradicted everything the Vorthan believed about galactic civilization. These humans fought with a savagery and technological sophistication that no species in recorded history had ever displayed. All ships, emergency retreat, Kethvar ordered. Fall back to the system edge and call for reinforcements from the home fleet. The surviving Vorthan vessels began a desperate withdrawal, abandoning their ground forces and orbital positions in a chaotic retreat that left their formation in ruins. Ships that had terrorized dozens of worlds fled in panic from human weapons that treated their advanced shields and armor like tissue paper. Down in the underground caverns of Kepler 442b, Prime Elder Silthara listened to the reports from her surface observers with amazement and growing hope. The massive fleet that had been preparing to bury her people alive was breaking apart under attack from the mysterious humans who had answered their desperate call for help. "Elder, the bombardment has stopped," reported one of her scouts. "The Vorthan ships are retreating toward the outer system. Whatever these humans are doing up there, it's working." Colonel Wright's marine drop pods began their descent toward the planet's surface, carrying the first human ground forces to set foot on an alien world. Their mission was to link up with Zalani survivors and provide protection while the fleet finished destroying the Vorthan invasion force. 3 months after the Battle of Kepler 442b, Ambassador Helen Davis stood before the assembled representatives of the Galactic Confederation in their great council chamber on the capital world of Nexus Prime. The massive hall contained delegates from over 200 species, each representing civilizations that had existed in peaceful cooperation for thousands of years. Today, that peace was shattered by the knowledge that a new species had entered their galaxy with military capabilities that made their traditional defenses meaningless. Council Speaker Ralthek, an elderly being from one of the galaxy's oldest civilizations, struggled to maintain order as delegates shouted questions and demands in dozens of different languages. The emergency session had been called after reports of the human victory over the Vorthan Empire spread throughout galactic space, causing panic among species who had lived under Vorthan protection or threat for centuries. "The human representative will address the council," Ralthek announced, his translator converting his words into the common galactic language. "Ambassador Davis, please explain your species' intentions regarding galactic civilization." "Helen." Davis stepped forward, aware that her words would determine whether humanity became a welcome member of galactic society or a feared enemy that all other species would unite against. The past 3 months had been a whirlwind of first contact protocols, cultural exchange, and careful diplomacy as Earth tried to establish relationships with alien civilizations. "Honored delegates, humanity seeks only peaceful coexistence with all species," Davis began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "We did not come to your galaxy as conquerors. We came because we heard a cry for help from innocent people facing extinction, and we could not ignore that call. Elder." Kira Lin, now serving as the Zalani representative to the galactic government, rose from her seat in the observer section. Her testimony over the past months had been crucial in presenting humanity in a positive light, describing how human forces had not only driven off the Vorthon invaders, but had immediately begun providing humanitarian aid to the survivors. The humans saved 3 million Zalani lives, Kira Lin testified. Their soldiers shared their food with our children, and their doctors treated our wounded without asking for anything in return. They are not the monsters that some delegates claim them to be. Director Paul Johnson worked frantically in his research station on the rebuilt Kepler 442b, analyzing data from dozens of first contact situations as human exploration ships encountered other species throughout the galaxy. Each meeting provided new insights into galactic civilization and confirmed that humanity's military capabilities were far beyond anything other species possessed. The joint Human-Zalani Research Facility had become a model for interspecies cooperation, combining human adaptability with Zalani scientific knowledge to create innovations that neither species could have achieved alone. Their agricultural techniques were already being adopted by other worlds, while human defensive technologies were being studied by species facing their own security threats. Director Johnson, we're receiving another request for human protection, reported his aide, Lieutenant Karen Brown. The Altarian Republic is facing raids from the Corvin Syndicate and wants to know if Earth would consider a defense agreement. Johnson smiled as he reviewed the proposal. In the 3 months since Kepler 442b, 17 different species had requested human protection from various threats. The Vorthon Empire's collapse had created a power vacuum that was being filled by smaller aggressive species and criminal organizations. Humanity was quickly becoming the galaxy's unofficial police force. War Marshal Kethvar sat in a detention cell on the Human Research Station, awaiting trial for war crimes against the Zalani population. His capture during the battle's aftermath had provided valuable intelligence about Vorthon military doctrine and revealed the scope of their empire's atrocities across dozens of worlds. The Vorthon way of war is finished, Kethvar told his human interrogators during one of their sessions. For 1,000 years, we conquered through fear and superior firepower. Your species fights like nothing we have ever encountered. You make war the way predators hunt, with intelligence and ruthless efficiency. Admiral Parker reviewed the latest strategic reports from her headquarters on Earth's moon. The victory at Kepler 442b had demonstrated human military superiority, but it had also revealed the massive scope of galactic civilization. Earth was one small world facing hundreds of species, some of which possessed technologies and resources that dwarfed human capabilities. Admiral, the Zalani have agreed to share their biotechnology in exchange for continued military protection, reported Colonel Wright. Their agricultural techniques could solve food shortages on Earth's outer colonies, while their medical knowledge might extend human lifespans by decades. Parker nodded as she studied the integration proposals. Humanity's position in galactic civilization was becoming clearer each day. They were not the most advanced species in terms of technology or science, but their military capabilities and moral character made them natural protectors for peaceful civilizations that could not defend themselves. The Vorthon Empire was fragmenting into smaller independent states as client species rebelled against their former masters. Some Vorthan groups were attempting to negotiate surrender terms with Earth, offering technological secrets in exchange for protection from their former subjects who sought revenge for centuries of oppression. Captain Steve Mitchell recently, promoted after his heroic actions during the ground campaign, led a patrol of human fighters through the outer system where the battle had taken place. The debris field from destroyed Vorthan ships served as a monument to humanity's first victory in galactic warfare, but also as a reminder of the responsibility that came with such overwhelming military power. "Control, this is Patrol 7, Mitchell reported. "Detecting incoming ships at the system edge. Configuration matches the Altarian Republic vessels we've been expecting. The Altarian delegation had come to formally request human protection from the Corvan raiders who had been attacking their mining colonies. Their arrival marked the beginning of what historians would later call the Human Protection Protocols, a series of agreements that established Earth as the galaxy's primary defender of peaceful civilizations. Ambassador Davis concluded her address to the Galactic Council with words that would define humanity's role in galactic civilization for generations to come. We did not ask to become protectors of the galaxy, but we will not turn away from that responsibility. Any species that threatens innocent civilians will find that humans are willing to travel across the stars to stop them. Council Speaker Ralthek called for a formal vote on humanity's admission to galactic civilization. The result was overwhelmingly positive, as species after species voted to welcome Earth into their community. The galaxy had gained not just new members, but guardians who would ensure that the strong could never again prey upon the weak without consequences. Elder Kira Lynn watched the vote with tears of joy in her eyes, knowing that her people's desperate call for help had not only saved their world, but had brought justice and protection to countless other species throughout the galaxy. The age of Vorthon tyranny was over, and the age of human protection had begun.